Hi, I'm Jan. I'm a Dutch photographer living in Germany. Used to study photography in Paris and in Miami. And now I more live back in Munich since 2 years and doing collage work. Mainly photographic collage work. Mainly I shoot 35mm film and then I reconstruct it to digital. So basically I scan it. Then I make the scans digital, and then from digital it goes back to analog, and that's how I create my collages mainly. The first time I was really interested in photography was mainly when I was on set with a photographer friend of my mother in Paris and held a professional camera in my hand and saw like all the entire surrounding, the set, the people, how it works. It was intimidating at first, but then it looked like a lot of fun, and basically that's how it all started, like how I got interested in everything. The first time I started shooting properly or with a proper camera was actually the first time I was on set. It was with a photographer, a friend of my mom, as I told. And he had like a procedure that every time he had a photo shoot for it didn't matter if it was for a big magazine or a small magazine or a big client. At the end of the shoot, every assistant got like 10 minutes for himself and could rearrange the set any way he wanted and take pictures of the models or whatever it was. In that case, it was models. So it was new to me, but all the other assistants basically already were ready to go. They had like the entire props, everything with them. And they were just waiting for the get-go. So it was, okay, guys, you go and shoot, build up your sets and go. So I just saw one guy pulling out clothing, everything, and then it's like rearranging the set, the light, and all that stuff. And basically, when those guys were done, it was 2 or 3 assistants. The photographer gave the camera to me and said, like, "What do you want to do? Don't you want to shoot too?" And I was more or less super overwhelmed. I didn't know what to do. So basically, I just said to the guys, like, "Give me a little help, little lending hand." And he said, "Yeah, well, just direct it, whatever you want." So basically I took a couple of portraits, close-ups and everything, and then at the end he got them developed as it was shot on film. It was extremely amazing. It's like just to see what you can do in 10 minutes, like with the help of a couple of people, showing you like the ropes, what to do, how to do it, how to set a light, how to set a beauty dish and all that stuff. It was incredibly amazing. So basically that's where the first shoot I ever did, but not actually mine, his, but it was a great experience. First camera I ever used, I would say it was a Polaroid Spectra. It was my mom's camera, so I was pretty young, 10, 11, 12, around that age, and she always had the camera with her, but basically I always found a lot of fun using the camera. So playing around with it, just seeing what it does and seeing instantly what happens. So that's also like a big influence to my work now, because using that kind of film where you instantly see what you get is very cool. And with my work now, it's more or less a mixture of analog and instant. So it gives me the pleasure of having both mediums at hand. But I would say that was the first camera I had. But the first professional camera I had, I probably think was some kind of digital Canon camera. And I basically just played around. It was before or shortly after I started in Paris. And then I bought more or less my first analog camera, which was a 35mm Nikon F. Yeah, with a 35mm lens. It was a great camera because you learn how to compose, how to read lights, how to use like everything properly in a camera. Most photographers nowadays basically just use the camera and say, "Oh, that's too light, turn some wheels," and it might look good, might not look good, do some post stuff or whatever. But with the old cameras, basically, you have 36 shots and then that's it. So you have kind of an issue where you can't shoot around like a fool and say, "Well, do it later." That basically didn't exist at that point. So yeah, that was the first professional analog camera I had. So basically I started the entire project September 2018. Every time I shot something, I had a Polaroid camera with me and took shots on the side while people were eating or whatever. It's like while but stuff was going on the set. So every time I shot, took a Polaroid, was playing around with them after, loved the Polaroids actually much more than I actually did like the pictures that I shot. So then I was home, played around, started cutting the Polaroids apart. And then from that, more or less, I got the idea to create collages. So with the technology nowadays, it's pretty cool because you can recreate digital to analog and vice versa. So I tried to figure out a couple of ways, shooting like everything just on Polaroids or shooting it on tripods with multiple cameras, and all looked very off perspective. So I tried to figure out a proper way, and then I actually more or less discovered a quite unique way to manage to get the accuracy of a digital shot and to recreate it analog, so as a Polaroid. And basically that's how I create my collages nowadays. So from there I shoot it analog. I have a Pentax 6.7, and then I scan the pictures, digitalize the pictures, then I cut the pictures digitally on a computer, and then I make them analog again, and then basically I set the pieces right like a puzzle. So basically the pictures have the accuracy of the digital print from the analog slide, and that more or less at the end creates an analog picture of multiple single slides of instant film. How I evolved as a photographer, I would say I used to shoot a lot of digital, a lot of flash, a lot of, in the beginning you try to be a lot like other people, and then after a while you realize that you basically have to do what gives you the most pleasure. So after a while I would say basically I switched back to analog because that's how I learned it. That's where I actually get the most fun, because you really have to think about the imaging, the framing, everything. So you focus more on the actual subject that you photographed, and instead of pressing a button the entire time and feeling like a monkey. So nowadays, basically I shoot more analog, more medium formats, more continuous lighting, very subtle, not that in more. So basically how I choose a project, I'm very jumpy when it comes to that. So I have one thing that is like forthgoing the entire time. It's when I shoot people. So every time I have a client or anything else, basically I shoot something on the side every time. Even if I ask the model on the sides, like if she likes the collages, and if they love it, basically we take a picture on the side and I give it to the client or to the ad agency or to the modeling agency. They usually like that stuff if I do it on the side, but basically for me it's like it's my forthgoing project. But then sometimes I do stuff on the side, so I browse through books, see something, like it, then I just say to myself, well, let's do it, and then I basically jump right into it, realize that project, and then either I like it and I keep on doing it for a little while, and then I stop it. But I usually always have the same, it's more or less the same topic. So it's mainly women, which I shoot and portray, and then the other stuff is on the side. So when I start a project, I have a library of books, and then I go through the books. Mainly it's all the stuff that interests me in my library. So it's inspired by artists like Matisse or Hockney, or even ads, might be record covers or anything basically. And from there, basically I choose a series of images, make them up in my mind, draw them down, scribble them down. I have a notepad where I write everything. And then basically the entire work process starts. So call the agency, stylist, makeup, basically the team. And then you start conceptualizing a bit more, talk to your team basically, and they see what their response is. And then from there, I would say basically I go to the studio and start shooting.